Welcome into Fantasy Fix, our fantasy football podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Holt. I'm joined by Darren Hartwell. And Darren, we're on to week 7 of the fantasy football season,
Moving
the
right
NFL
along.
regular season. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's another eventful week. It seems like there are some patterns developing, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into all that good stuff. First, we have to talk about this week 6 that just happened because it was a very big moment for both of us. We played each other in our Nesson League.
Yep. Bitter rivalry. You can really see it,
It was, really beating each other up back here. It was very close. You did eke out the victory.
Yeah. 0.32 points.
For first place in our league. We'll just pretend because I don't want to lose all credibility here. But yeah, you got the victory.
It was very close, yeah.
I will say I don't think you deserve the victory. I mean, you got it because I'm a terrible coach. Let's just be honest. I do not play the right players any given week. This week on my bench, I had Mark Ingram, who had 114 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. That would have been good for 25 points in the league. I would have obviously beat you. Derrick Henry, also on the bench. He ran for 131 yards and a touchdown, 20 points in our league. So, like I said, I would have been fired by now if I was an NFL coach, but hey.
To be fair, I'll give you Derrick Henry. I don't think many people would have started Derrick Henry. I know the Colts aren't a great defense, but he's kind of the backup running back to DeMarco Murray. But it's how things work out. I'm not complaining.
You can't critique my decisions now that I
I'm not
lost.
complaining.
Like rub salt in the wound there.
Yeah.
It's a silly thing to complain about because it all falls on me. But every week I'm like, I would have won this match if
Got to push the right buttons.
Just did the right thing. But how did your team do?
Yeah, so a couple guys that did pretty well for me. Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, this guy.
He's putting up big time stats. He's actually one of the top fantasy scorers of across the league. He's been amazing for the entire season. A good guy at tight end spot, Evan Engram. He stepped up. He was we talked about him on the waiver wire last week as a guy who would kind of fill the void left by Odell Beckham Jr. and Sterling Shepard and Brandon Marshall, and he had 82 yards and a touchdown. Nice little boost there. I was disappointed by a few of my guys, T.Y. Hilton, Jordy Nelson. Obviously, the Packers situation, not good. We'll get into that more, but again, I can't complain. Did just enough. As the motto goes, it doesn't matter how many points you win by as long as you get that W. So
those close losses, they sting more
really
than the
do.
others.
Yes.
So yeah, the week is not starting off on the best foot, but alas, we will move on and persevere.
On to week 7.
I'll make it. It's okay. I'll survive. Let's talk about the biggest takeaways and storylines from week 6. Adrian Peterson, you put this. I like this. Back from the dead. He was the 3rd highest scoring player in week 6. Now, this is a guy that up until this week, the most yards he had in a game, the most he had rushed for was 33. This week he finished with 134 rushing yards, so that says a lot, and 2 touchdowns. So obviously that trade to the Cardinals is really working in his favor, at least for this past week. He played 48 snaps on Sunday, which is more than he played over 4 games in New Orleans. So last week we said stay away from this guy when we heard about the trade news. It was breaking at the time. However, given how much he was utilized by this team and what he was able to do, are you kind of looking at him now off the waiver wire?
I mean, you have to. I think just the fact that he got so many touches in this game, I think points to the Cardinals clearly had a plan for signing Adrian Peterson. They wanted to bring him in, and they'd been completely going away from the run game, and then they just said, all right, we're gonna turn back the clock and play smash mouth running football with Adrian Peterson, and it worked. It worked last week. I don't know. I think he's worth an ad if you look at who they're. Well, first of all, he might actually be owned in a lot of leagues just because of the name factor. I think a lot of people have him on their rosters. But next week against the Rams, they actually have allowed the most fantasy points to running backs this season.
Okay, good news for him.
So I think he has a good matchup next week. I think down the line, I'm still not sold on his long-term outlook. I think if you just look at his body of work over the last couple of years, he's had occasional good games, but this just isn't the Adrian Peterson NFL anymore. I think times have changed. I think teams will adjust if the Cardinals continue to kind of pound the ball with him. And that it's good news for the Cardinals offense in that it gives them an extra dimension. Maybe it opens up some play action, but yeah, I don't really see him as like a guy who's going to be 100 yards and a touchdown every game. I just don't think he has that in him.
So proceed with caution
Yes.
if you're getting Adrian Peterson. Now,
Yeah.
just as on the trade as a whole, who else benefited from this?
Yeah, well, you're not going to like this, but Mark Ingram, big-time beneficiary of
On the bench.
of Adrian Peterson leaving New Orleans. You saw a ton of, like you said, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns, saw a ton of touches. He's now the clear number 1 back. He doesn't have Peterson lurking on the sideline. I almost said Gary Payton. Sean Payton doesn't have to worry about keeping Peterson happy. Then Alvin Kamara.
Stupid.
Yeah. Why didn't you start Aiden? No, I'm just kidding. Mark Ingram. Alvin Kamara, also good news for him. He didn't really break out. That was my bold prediction for last week, that he would break out. He had 87 total yards, which is, okay, I think. But I think going forward, he's going to be the primary pass-catching back now. Everyone kind of moves up one rung in New Orleans. So good news for both of those guys.
Okay, moving on to an interesting fact, talking about the storylines from Week 6. You already kind of mentioned it, Deshaun Watson, how great he's been doing. Mm-hmm. Rookies have finished with 59 touchdowns through Week 6, which is the most through the first 6 weeks of a season since 1970.
Crazy.
We have guys like Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt, Deshaun Watson, like we mentioned. These guys are just incredible. Deshaun Watson is on pace to just absolutely destroy the NFL record for most touchdown passes by a rookie this season.
Yeah,
it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, it really has, man. And I think a lot of people are kind of waiting for the fall off with a lot of these guys. But we've seen Watson; they just keep putting him in situations to put up points, and he keeps succeeding. Obviously, you have to look at the matchups. Like he played the Browns last week. Watson played the Browns last week, but these guys have a chance to make an impact, and they're doing it. And they have fresh legs, I think, is the biggest thing. It's I hate to say it, but injuries and age, the NFL takes a toll. So if you have a guy like Leonard Fournette who's just running over everybody and is they're kind of focusing the offense around him. So I think we're going to see more of that going forward.
And you mentioned those injuries. Now
Yep.
Another storyline. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers, broken right collarbone. This has been such a horrible year for injuries in the NFL.
Yeah.
You hate to see this. I mean, J.J. Watt, Odell Beckham Jr., David Johnson, Julian Edelman, Spencer Ware, just a few of the names here. It's a situation that no one wants to see. These guys all make the NFL a better place, a better league. You had opponents sending messages of support to Rodgers. Richard Sherman tweeted, "I hope Aaron Rodgers is okay. The league is better when he's healthy," and I think this is the storyline that we're getting from all the guys. They want to see a guy like Aaron Rodgers in there. He goes, "Praying for you." Tom Brady apparently emailed Rodgers when he heard the news too. It seems like the quarterback season is over. I mean, it's not the first time he's broken his collarbone. He did back in 2013, and he came back, I think, in Week 17 that year. But
Yeah.
It's the
It's
right
tough.
side, which is just throwing.
And for fantasy purposes, you're probably, unless you're in the championship, you're not going to be, that's not going to matter anyways, even if he comes back in the last 2 weeks. So yeah, for obviously it's pretty rough for NFL standpoint. For fantasy, he's, you might as well move on.
Yeah, I mean, what does this mean for the Packers now moving forward?
Yeah, I think across the board, it definitely takes a hit for everybody. It was an interesting situation for their running backs. You actually have a guy coming back that hurt both of their draft stock or fantasy stock. Ty Montgomery and Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones got 14 touches to Montgomery's 11. So it kind of seems like it's a committee now. Jones was doing well when Montgomery was hurt and seemed to be kind of taking the lead there. But now it's a running back by committee. Now they're going to need to rely on the running game a little bit more, but they won't have the passing game as a threat. So teams maybe can load up the box a little bit more. You have a quarterback, Brett Hundley, threw 3 interceptions coming in for Aaron Rodgers, so that's not good. Obviously, Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, got to temper the expectations.
And I know a lot of people were tossing around names: Tony Romo, Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, huge names in the
I heard Brett
headlines.
Favre in
Did you
there.
really? Yeah, people were curious what the Packers would do here, but like you said, they're sticking with Brett Hundley. Now, what do you think about him as a replacement for Rodgers? I mean, you just said it, 3 interceptions, probably just stay away.
Yeah, I think for now. So look, I mean, maybe this is a situation where he gets it together. I mean, they got him for a reason. He was a pretty high draft pick, and he's been sitting behind Rodgers, kind of learning the offense for a few years now. That's what Rodgers did when he replaced Favre. So I think you have to wait and see, though. I think, next week it's an interesting matchup because they're playing the Saints, who have been beaten through the air. But so maybe you can justify starting Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson, guys like that. But for Brett Hundley's sake, I'm avoiding him until he shows me something.
Okay, so a big question mark there for the Packers
Yes,
as well.
big time.
Now, some good news on the injury front. I like to hear this. Minnesota Vikings quarterback Teddy Bridgewater, he suffered this absolutely gruesome knee injury in the preseason last year. He has been cleared to return to practice on Wednesday. He has sat out 14 months after this horrific knee injury, as we said, on August 30th, 2016. So all the hard work that he put into this rehab process, I can't even begin to imagine what he was doing there. Good for him. Obviously, it doesn't really help us out on the fantasy front, but I think in light of all these people being injured, you like to hear someone returning to the field.
Exactly. And I think, if you're in a 2QB league, if you're in a deeper league, he's probably gonna be returning to the field in a few weeks, so or maybe even earlier. So they have Sam Bradford's hurt right now, so it's basically Case Keenum, and they don't really have a backup, which is why Bridgewater is kind of entering the fold right now. So yeah, I think he's worth maybe a roster spot. People kind of forgot about him, but this is a guy who has pretty high expectations. So we'll see how it goes.
Some good news.
Yeah.
We needed to lighten up this Tuesday, the beginning of the week.
Yeah.
Now, bad news. Rodgers is out. Jameis Winston, he could miss a start.
Yep.
I'm going to add Big Ben to this list. I know he's not injured, but he's my starting quarterback, and I am completely done with him, the bad coach that I am. I mean, I waited too long to get rid of him. He stinks. He has 8 interceptions this year. He's not helping me out at all. Yeah. So let's talk about replacement quarterbacks for these guys that are injured or the guys that we're just tired of having us lose games.
Doesn't sound like you're bitter at all.
I'm not bitter. Nope.
Yeah.
Lost to Darren.
One guy I like is Jared Goff. I think it's kind of a buy low situation there. He's had a couple tough weeks, only 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, but that was against Seattle and Jacksonville, and turns out Jacksonville has a pretty decent defense. So I think he's a good bounce back candidate this week. He's playing the Cardinals, who have been beaten through the air. They gave up 3 passing touchdowns to the Bucs this past week. So I like Goff. I think he's a kind of a plug and play guy. I also like Tyrod Taylor. He's another guy who's coming off the bye, so he might be available, and he is playing the Bucs. And so I think the Bucs can be beaten through the air, and he's a guy. Tyrod Taylor's always a guy who has a pretty high floor because of his ability to run, and he could be good for a couple touchdown passes. So yeah. Pick up Tyrod Taylor, drop Big Ben.
Okay, done. Don't have to tell me twice.
Yeah.
Now, Golden Tate could miss a few weeks with the shoulder injury. Is there anyone that you're looking at to replace him with?
Yeah, I'm going to stay in Detroit, and I like Marvin Jones. He's owned in, I think a little over 50% of leagues, so he might already be taken.
Scoop him up.
But scoop him up. So we all saw that one-handed catch that he made is pretty amazing catch against the Saints, and everyone likes those catches. But the meat behind that, he was targeted 14 times. A lot of those came after Tate got injured. So I think he's going to be probably the number 1 target in that offense. So I think he's worth adding. Especially Lions are on a bye this week, so it's not going to be immediate dividends. But I like him going forward. I think Tate's going to miss maybe 1 or 2, possibly 3 weeks coming off the bye. So he's a good add.
Let's talk about this Ezekiel Elliott suspension.
Now,
I can't even keep up at this point, but I'm just going to read the facts for you.
Yeah.
The NFL Players Association filed a motion for a temporary restraining order in order to help him get back on the field. Now, as of Tuesday afternoon when we are filming this, so right now, it could be changing at any time, really, but his suspension is scheduled to end Friday, November 24th. So the next game he would play, if this is upheld, would be week 13 on November 30th. This has been just really confusing to follow along with. I don't have him, obviously, because I'm losing so much. But if you do have him and you knew this moment would come, he's got you the points. You have to be happy so far, except for that week 2 performance. But what do you do now?
Yeah, and actually, I think we had an update pretty recently. So the Fifth Circuit, the court denied the NFLPA's motion to recall the mandate, which means essentially—
I Googled like 30 minutes ago. Come on.
Basically, all it means is that he's still suspended.
Okay.
So this is I think there's maybe one more option Elliott's legal team has, but I think he's suspended as of now. So that means we go to the great Darren McFadden versus Alfred Morris debate. Everyone loves that debate. Those are the two guys who are going to fight for carries. There's kind of this theory that the Cowboys were just saving Darren McFadden in case of this situation. He hasn't gotten a single touch this season, so he's just hanging out. And Alfred Morris has seen some carries. I like Alfred Morris. I think he's a little bit above McFadden in my Cowboys running back depth chart right now. I think he's actually seen the field. He's 28 years old, so he's not as old as McFadden. He's got a little bit more shiftiness to him. McFadden's kind of a put your head down and between the tackles type guy. I know McFadden has had success in the Cowboys offense in the past, and I do think it's going to be somewhat of a running back by committee. So I think you have to temper expectations a little bit, but I'd say both of them are probably already taken on your waiver wire right now, but if you had to prioritize, I'd put Morris a little bit ahead of McFadden.
Well, we've talked about these injuries. We've talked about these question marks that we have. Luckily, there's only 2 teams on byes this week, so that helps us a little bit, right?
It does, yeah.
The Detroit Lions and the Houston Texans. Now, quarterbacks, you have to replace Matt Stafford and Deshaun Watson, so I wish I had played you this upcoming week.
Yep.
He will be missed greatly.
He will, yeah.
And then running backs, Lamar Miller, Amir Abdullah, and wide receivers, Golden Tate, DeAndre Hopkins, and Will Fuller. So some key names there to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for Golden Tate owners, it works out a litto bit because he's already hurt. So that was a situation we're going to have to deal with him being out anyways. But yeah, still guys to replace. Not as bad as in previous weeks, but coming up, 8, 9, 10, 11, these next few weeks, a lot of bye weeks. So get your waiver wire claims in now.
We don't need any extra hurdles, Darren.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Now, waiver wire superstars for week 7. Yeah. Given all the holes we have to fill now that we just talked about, who are you looking at?
Yeah, one guy I like, running back, Orleans Darkwa. I think he's, first of all, great name. That's the first.
Extra points there.
Yeah, that's the first priority.
Helps.
So he had 21 carries, 117 yards against the Broncos, who arguably have the best running defense in the league. So I thought that was a big step for him. He's in the backfield with Wayne Gallman and Shane Vereen kind of sharing touches, and to me, he proved that he's the number 1 back in that offense. Considering where the Giants are and how reliant they might have to be on the run with Odell Beckham out, with Brandon Marshall out, with the injuries to the receiving core, I think he's going to get a few carries. So he's one guy I like. I also like Austin Seferian-Jenkins. He's we'll get into the Pats-Jets game, but he should have had 2 touchdowns in theory.
Depending on who you ask.
Depending on who you ask. He's still caught a touchdown, though, and that's 2 straight weeks with a touchdown. So he's kind of becoming one of Josh McCown's favorite targets. Their wide receiving core is a little shaky. So pretty good matchup against the Dolphins next week. I like him, too.
Now, you mentioned this Jets player. Let's do a little Patriots fantasy check-in. Don't act like you weren't nervous during this Patriots game. These guys were down 14-0 to the Jets, of all people. So just to make matters worse there, of course, they came away with a victory, 19-14. I don't think they're looking like that Super Bowl winning team from last year, but I digress.
Yeah.
Rob Gronkowski, he finished with 83 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Gronk owners, very happy with that performance.
Yeah, Gronk is back. That was a big sign for him. He's Brady's number 1 target, especially with Edelman out. So that's good news. Gronk's okay. When he's healthy, start him up.
Well, speaking of that guy Brady, he was just okay for his standards. His 2nd interception of the season, I still gasp every time that Brady throws an interception. Just 2 passing touchdowns, also mediocre by his standards. So, I mean, you're still happy if you're a Brady owner, but still. Yeah,
I think there's a little bit of, if you're watching that game, just the amount of deep shots he's taking. Obviously, with Edelman out of the lineup, he kind of has to rely on the home run a little bit more. That said, you look at his stats across the season, I think he'll be fine. And he's playing the Falcons. Super Bowl rematch, Sunday Night Football. He's going to bring it.
Hey, if you're in our league, I think you should drop him. Pick him up. Okay, Patriots running backs. We've talked about the highs and lows for Pats running backs. Dion Lewis found the end zone for the 2nd time in the last 3 games. However, we just have already talked about this. We don't really know which running back we could trust at any point. I mean, do you look at Dion Lewis now? I'm sure he's available in the majority of your leagues.
I think, yeah, in a deeper league, I would take a look at him, especially considering Mike Gillislee lost a fumble, which you don't want to do. You get in Bill Belichick's doghouse pretty quickly that way. But that being said, these are the Patriots running backs we're talking about. I don't think you can really predict who's going to be the bell cow. I don't think they usually have a bell cow unless it's a running back themed game plan. And Gillislee and Lewis, I think, will still compete with touches in the running game, and then they have James White catching passes out of the backfield. So maybe he's a spot play against the Falcons, considering this could be a high scoring game, but I wouldn't bank your matchup on it.
Speaking of being unpredictable, the Patriots wide receivers now. Brandon Cooks, he had an encouraging day, but our guy Chris Hogan, who we talked about last week as being the most consistent guy for the Patriots so far.
Figure.
And then, of course, he goes ahead and he only finishes with 19 yards this week. So,
yep.
I mean, still, if you own these two guys, confusing. I don't know what to do moving forward.
Yeah, I think Hogan's still a reliable guy. Everyone's going to have an off day, and I think the Patriots, when they play at New York, something funky always happens. They don't really put up huge stats in New York, but I think he'll be fine. And I was encouraged by Brandon Cooks. I caught that deep pass near the end of the game to set up, or I think it was near the end of the first half to set up the first Gronk touchdown. So I like him. He's still he's getting a steady stream of targets, even though it's not that high. It's still steady, and Brady looks for him on the big plays. So
Thursday night football this week, everyone's favorite night of the week. Chiefs versus Raiders.
Decent game. Yeah, decent game this time.
Yeah, the Chiefs are on the road. I mean, who do you like in this matchup?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Chiefs have dominated the Raiders over the last 5 matchups. They've won 5 straight.
Wow.
Yeah, go figure. And so the Chiefs are in a pretty good spot, even though they dropped their first game. I still like Alex Smith. I still like Kareem Hunt. I think teams are loading up against him, but he's at the least he's going to get you 10 points, and probably much higher. I think the Raiders can be beat on the ground. Travis Kelce's status will be important to monitor. He's dealing with a concussion, so make sure you check that. But yeah, I'm fine on the Chiefs. Going over to the Raiders side, Amari Cooper, he's in one of my leagues. Huge disappointment. He's been brutal. I know that you don't want to give up hope too soon, but in a Thursday night game, I'm actually avoiding Cooper. I don't think you can start him. If you're going to start a wide receiver, go with Michael Crabtree. He caught a touchdown the other day. I think he's kind of the go-to guy now, at least until Cooper starts catching balls.
Very important.
Yeah, and then Marshawn Lynch, another speculative play. Chiefs have actually been pretty good against the run, and I think Lynch is kind of a touchdown-dependent guy. Chiefs, like I said, have been solid against the run. Not a lot of touchdowns allowed, so he's maybe borderline RB2.
Okay, let's talk about defenses. We have this genius formula that we just pick up whoever plays the Jets or the Browns. So is that the formula moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that strategy versus the Jets might not be as sound as we thought.
Darn it.
They're 3-3 now. They're scoring some points and they're winning some games. So the Dolphins are playing them. I don't see the Dolphins defense as necessarily elite, so I would probably avoid the Dolphins against the Jets.
Okay, we're changing up the formula this week.
Yeah, but one part of the formula that remains intact, the Browns. The Browns still turn the ball over like crazy. They're still not great. So the Titans, they had a pretty strong showing on Monday Night Football the other night. So yeah, I'd say you can confidently start the Titans against the Browns.
Any other defenses you're looking at?
Yeah, so I think probably the best defense out there this week is the Vikings. They're playing at home against the Ravens. Baltimore's offense, pretty bad. They lost to the Bears last week. So, and the Vikings did pretty well against the Packers once Brett Hundley came in, which leads me to the next point. I think the New Orleans Saints defense is actually a pretty strong play. They're playing the Packers at Lambeau Field, but the Saints defense has been, from a fantasy perspective, dominant over the last 3 weeks. They've forced 9 turnovers over the last 3 games. So Brett Hundley is starting, and it's, I think, what will be his first NFL start. Getting solid action. I like the Saints, so I don't think it's too crazy. They'll probably be buried somewhere way down in your waiver wire, but I'd go and scoop them up.
Hey, he's no Rodgers yet, right? So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take advantage.
Mm-hmm.
What about a bold prediction for Week 7?
Yeah, Patriots fans are not going to like this, but I think Julio Jones, he's been kind of flying under the radar. Yeah, he hasn't really been doing well. It seems that the cure for ailing fantasy players is to play the Patriots.
Oh, no.
And, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Patriots won't win. It just means that Julio Jones is going to have a big day. First, I don't think he's topped 100 receiving yards this season, so I think this is the first time he does it. We all saw what he did against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, but if there's the same outcome, I think everyone can be happy. Julio Jones owners can be happy with a big performance. Patriots fans can be happy with the win. We can all get along.
Yeah, we can all coexist in this world. Well, as you mentioned, on Sunday we have a Super Bowl 51 rematch between the Atlanta Falcons and the New England Patriots at Gillette Stadium. Game time is scheduled for 8:30 p.m. We will be there on NESN.com, so make sure you tune in before the game for our live pre-game show and after the game for post-game coverage. And as always, keep it on NESN.com for all your fantasy football news.